Okay, sorry again, it cut off at the end there. I only got about 10 minutes for each of these screencasts, so I'm almost done. It kind of left off, it was covering up what I was doing over here. So just to kind of recap what I was doing, I was dragging in my patterns and my photographs and applying clipping masks or layer masks to those so it just stays the same size as the actual 3x3 inch square that I created. So to do what I was doing before, I was just control clicking these until I found the correct layer that I wanted to apply the actual mask to, or the mask shape. And then I went back over to the image layer, the layer that had the image on it, and then I hit the mask button to apply it to it. So you can see here, this last one's the one we have to do. I did this forest one before, so I'm going to close that, go to this last forest, drag and drop it right where I need it. That looks good. The only problem is if I resize it like this now, it'll cut it out. So I could do this a couple ways. I can control D and deselect that and then resize this rather large image. So I can control T to bring that up. By the way, if the bounding box is so big it goes off your screen, all you do is hit Control 0 and it'll zoom it out so you could see the rest of your image, so you could resize it. So I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'm just going to size this down to a relatively manageable size there, and then hit enter to accept my changes. So it's in position over that square. Now I just need to look on my layer order here. It looks like it's this one because it's in the lower right corner, and control click it. You'll see the bounding box. You're going to go up to the image layer, which happens to be layer 4, and just hit mask. Okay, so everything is set up to be able to do the text. Now you're going to pretty much do the same thing in terms of making text more legible on these different types of backgrounds. Only this time you're going to use the layer style feature in Photoshop, which is this little FX icon. And oftentimes I tell my students, I wish they would just call this layer effects and not layer styles, since the little icon is an FX, because it doesn't make any sense. But anyways, you can see when you click on this, you have all the different effect features that you saw in Illustrator embedded here in Photoshop for each layer. So next thing you'll want to do is grab your type tool, change your foreground or background color to something darker, something like, depending on what you go on. So again, challenge yourself. So for this one, I'm going to go black on this dark green, and I'm going to type the word trees again. And the problem with this is it changed from black and it picked up that green. So unfortunately, I'll double click this icon to select it and say, okay, no, choose black, really. There we go. And the reason you can't see the text is it's because it's underneath that top green square. So we got to drag this above it. There it is. And then if you double click the little icon in Photoshop that shows text, it'll highlight it and bring up the different text options at the top here. So I'm going to go with double that size so you can see it, maybe actually a lot bigger. Yeah, 48 looks good. And then I could change the color too if you want to get a little bit craftier and say, okay, I want it to be also a shade of green, because I'm going to do an effect to it. But you can see it's barely readable, but we're going to do some stuff to this to make it look better. Then I'm going to also change the font just to something that's a little bit more snazzy here that looks better. Something that feels like trees. I don't know. I can't find anything. Let's see. Really see anything that I like, but I can go with this like pirate looking font here. It's hard to see. And I'll drag that up a little bit bigger. By the way, instead of using the numbers, you could just hover over this little size icon and drag through it. All right, yeah, I use my move tool to move that in position, or the arrow keys. Now, I'm going to apply a layer style to this, or a layer effect, by going down here and clicking on it and doing something that makes sense. Like I could try drop shadow and see if that really makes it pop off. So this big old dialog pops up. You want to scoot that out of the way, right? And then you can see, you could kind of see it a little bit better. you can increase how far out you want it to go, the size of it, etc. But it's a little too hard to see. But while this is open, you can always say, nope, I don't want drop shadow. I'm going to uncheck that, and I want to try something else that's a little bit better, maybe like an outer glow. There we go. Just right away, without even touching any of the settings under outer glow, you can see that it's good as is. By the way, if you check off other things, you have to actually click on the name to bring up the settings for that. So that looks pretty good. I'll just call it a day and say okay on that one. And then you're going to continue on applying different layer styles under the effects icon here. Other things you could try to do too, if you want to make this a little bit more challenging, is if you want to try the color bar thing. So what I'll do is Control J and make a copy of that trees and drag it down. All right. And now I've got a copy of that. I can take and grab an effect and actually just get rid of it if I want to. So I can click on an effect and just say, I don't want to do an effect. So we're going to drag that down to the trash can like that. And the effect is gone off that one. And I could try other things too. Like let's say you want to try the little white color bar behind this. So I would make a new separate layer for that color bar and drag it underneath the text that I'm trying to make. Otherwise it'll cover it up when we fill it with white. And then I'm going to make a selection. Now the selection from last time is still set to fixed size 3 inches by 3 inches. So that won't work. So we want to change that to normal, which just lets us arbitrarily drag out a size. So I'm going to click on the edges of this and pull a little rectangle over that, leaving a little bit of space on the top and bottom so it gives it some freedom to kind of reside in there. And with that new blank layer selected, I'm going to switch my colors, or if I want to fill it with this background color versus the foreground, instead of Alt backspace, I'm going to Control backspace. So remember, those are your two shortcuts from last semester, Control backspace, Alt backspace. And with this, I could leave it as is, call it a day, and walk away. But sometimes it looks a little bit better to add some effects to it. So rather than doing that, I'm going to take layer 5 and I can just drop the opacity on that a little bit. All right, and you can see you're getting some of that texture in the background showing through, which serves two purposes. And it's not making it so you can't read the word trees. It's just enough. And then again, if you want to take it a step further and add a little bit of blurriness to it, you could try a filter, go to blur, Gaussian blur again, and then just blur it up just a tiny bit, just to give it a nice soft edge. See, that looks pretty good like that. Hit OK and call it a day. So what I want you to do is continue to work through all these in both Photoshop and Illustrator, and just challenge yourself to make sure you come up with something that looks neat, but making sure especially that your text is readable over different types of backgrounds. All right, so good luck. We'll talk to you later. Have a great day.